Hello, everyone. Welcome to Vanished Chicagoland Stories, the podcast. This is season 2, episode 39. I'm your host, Pete Costanis, and we have a very interesting show coming up. And this program is brought to you by Bell Phone Center Stores. And here is a commercial from 1981.
It's happening in your town.
It's spring. Time to play it pretty smart.
There's so much in store for you.
It's a pretty smart place to leave notes.
Take a look at all the smart things a pretty phone can do.
I can decorate a phone to match my home.
We have lots of pretty smart ideas this spring.
Getting Bell quality is pretty smart.
Come on in and play it pretty smart with genuine Bell.
The Bell Phone Center is for you.
Okay, I am back. I'm glad you enjoyed that commercial. That is one of the subjects I'll be talking during this program, which is actually the first thing I will talk about. The next two things I will talk about is actor and comedian Jack Benny, and also the Magic Pan Creperie Restaurants. I hope I pronounced that right. Forgive me. So first we'll talk about Bell Phone Center Stores. A couple of days ago, I posted a photo of a store on my Facebook page, Vanished Chicagoland, and also on my Twitter account. And it was from the late 1970s. And but I'm just like most people. Every time I type something, autofill gets in my way on your phone, or you're just in a hurry to type, and I put Bell Photo Center. So I apologize for that. And I corrected it. Anyway, so I remember these stores very well. At the time it was Illinois Bell. Now we have AT&T. They've changed. In 1983, Ma Bell broke up into several companies, several subsidiaries like that, if you call it that way. And right now it's AT&T is it's back the way it's supposed to be. It took a while. For that, because I remember Ameritech, and there was, I think, Bell South, and I forgot what other ones. But they're all together now, which is great. I don't have much information on how Bell Phone Center started. I remembered the commercials on television when I was growing up, when I was in high school. And I remember a couple of stores. Usually they're found in malls, shopping malls. I remember the one in Fort City on the southwest side. And I also remember at Orland Square in Orland Park. And I went to one at Fort City maybe once or twice. Maybe I browsed through it. And I don't remember exactly where it was in the mall. I'm not sure. It's been a long time. But as I mentioned before, I remember the commercials. There is a commercial on YouTube with Robin Williams. And in the commercial, he's with his wife and they're shopping, and he's trying on the phones in the store. And it's quite amusing. You expect him to go crazy in there and, make all these sound effects and noises, but he didn't do that, because every time I look at him, I laugh at him, because he was wonderful. It's a shame he died unexpectedly. And he was wonderful for Mork and Mindy. I used to watch that. So the type of phones that were sold at the store were the usual ones, like the trim line, which is fine. It was nice. We had one. I had one in my house recently, but it broke, so we put it in the kitchen. It was so nostalgic. My mother loved that. She loves that phone. But if the current phone that I have now breaks down, I'll probably buy another one. But they're hard to find. So last time I looked, it was at Best Buy. That's where I bought it. Or Fry Electronics in Downers Grove. But they just closed recently, which is a shame. And the other phone, besides the trim line, they also had like an oval shape. It looked like, and then with the receiver, and they also had the French phones which is very nice. And they also had one, it's like a cabinet, and you open up when the phone rings, you open the box and you pick up the receiver. It reminds me of the box that Thing used to live in the Addams Family. I don't know why, it's kind of silly. And a couple more phones they had. Well, actually three. They had one. It had like an old-fashioned ringer. Like you used to crank it up, but now they had a receiver. And they also had the candlestick phone, like they had in the 20s. 1910 and 1920s. You used to see them in the old movies like Laurel and Hardy, and like the silent movies like Charlie Chaplin, maybe Buster Keaton, and probably the old early gangster movies that Jimmy Cagney, Edward G. Robinson, George Raft. Like they were talking on the phone. Those are cool. I like those phones. But it's hard to when you do multitasking. Excuse me. It's hard to hold the receiver. And the last one was a phone where you hang it on the wall, but it had a blackboard. So when you answer the phone, and if they're looking for someone and it isn't there, you can write a message on the blackboard. It reminds me of on the Brady Bunch episode where Alice had her blackboard in the kitchen. And it was an episode where Greg Brady tried out for the football team at high school. And she had a recipe written down. And she's trying to remember it, but something always happens because somebody uses the blackboard and they erase it, and she freaks out. So that's one of my favorite episodes. I like that. Anyway, so the Bell Phone Center store probably lasted until maybe mid '80s. I did, and then telephones have changed so much because of cell phones. The cell phone was introduced in the 80s, I believe, but it wasn't widely distributed. And they were clunky and bulky and big, and that came in popularity in the 90s, late 90s, I believe. I didn't get mine until like early 2000s. The cell phone, my first one was at VoiceStream. I don't know if people remember that. And then T-Mobile bought it, so I'm stuck with them. And it was just a flip phone, no texting, just you dial in, dial out, and you had voicemail, and that's it. Very, very few selections. Now you have smartphones, iPhones, which I have now. It's wonderful, but I love the landlines because it's the clarity, it's the quality. I like that. I enjoy talking on the phone. It seems old fashioned to younger generations. They just ridicule you. It's not very nice, but that's how it was. It was interesting. Okay, so that'll be all for Bell Phone Center store, and now I'll be talking about Jack Benny. Why, you're asking yourself, why am I talking about Jack Benny? Well, for one thing, he was born in Chicago, actually Waukegan, so it's outside of Chicago. So he's sort of a Chicago native, and he was a wonderful entertainer, wonderful comedian. He made me laugh all the time. His timing was impeccable. Whenever he saw something strange, he would do that deadpan look like Bob Newhart does. And he would say that his signature exasperated well. He would do that. I love it. And he was well known as a miser, a skinflint, and he played the violin badly. And he ridiculously claimed to be 39 years of age. That's why I selected him for the show, because of episode 39. He was always 39. And in real life, he was not like that. He was very generous, very nice. He played the violin very well. He wasn't an expert, but he was adequate, and because on the TV and the radio and TV shows, he was awful. And when people heard that him playing, they cringe, and criticize. Not at first, but when they criticize, but he really, he was wonderful. And so he, as I mentioned before, he was born in Waukegan. His real name was Benjamin Kubeski. I don't know where you get the Benny part. Maybe when I read more, excuse me, I'll find out. And he was born in Waukegan on February 14th, 1894. And he studied at an age of 6. He started to study the violin. Excuse me, and he loved the instrument. His parents hoped he would be a professional violinist. That was true, but he hated to practice. I don't know why. He just didn't like to practice all the time. But he just played. I guess his parents encouraged him to, keep practicing and practicing, so you become famous as a violin concerto, or concert violinist. I hope I said it right. And then after he graduated from high school, then he toured vaudeville. Remember, young people, vaudeville? That was that was very popular. Live theater, comedy bits, juggling, singing, just like America's Got Talent. In those days. And then he did some after vaudeville. Someone approached him to be on the radio, and he did. He started on the radio in 1932 on NBC. It was called the Blue Network. The radio networks had blue, red. It's very confusing. Someday I'll explain it. And so it started. He started on radio in March. Yeah. So he began the program on May 2nd, 1932, and then he moved to CBS later on, and then he switched back and forth to CBS, NBC, on the radio networks. So it was not very. It was very common back then for radio performers. If they had programs, they keep switching networks. And first, the show was called the Canada Dry Ginger Ale program, and then they changed it to the Jack Benny program. And then his sponsor was Jello, and then they changed it to the Jello program starring Jack Benny, and that lasted about a long time. And he would just, and that was part of General Foods. I don't know if General Foods is still around because companies changed, products sold off like that. And he would also sponsor not just Jello but Grape Nuts, and did that. And then after, in the mid 40s, they dropped that. He didn't have that sponsor anymore, and then he sponsored Lucky Strikes cigarettes, and that was his radio sponsor in the 40s until the mid 50s when he had this TV. When his TV show debuted. Now I'll get to that in a moment. And then so on the radio show, he was a very popular comedian. He had a lot of guest stars. His best friend was George Burns, and he had his wife Gracie Allen. He also had Bing Crosby, Jamie Stewart, Orson Welles. He had a lot of famous people on there, and it was wonderful. I've listened to a couple radio shows online and in the car. I'll get to that in a little while. I'll explain that. And then he had a famous feud with comedian Fred Allen. A lot of people don't remember him, because he died in 1956, and he was a very popular radio comedian. On television, he was on What's My Line. He was one of the panelists, but he passed away in 1956. So that's what most people remember him, and it's a shame because I remember watching him on TV and listening to radio. He was hilarious. So Jack Benny had a feud with Fred Allen, but they really were close friends, and that was very popular. The feud. It's like, but they started a couple movies together, and Jack Benny did a few movies. I remember one I watched, a couple of them actually, To Be or Not to Be, and George Washington Slept Here, and I loved that. Those were wonderful movies. He wasn't much of a movie actor. He was funnier on radio for some reason. I don't know why. When you see him on screen, he was great, but on the movies, you expect him to be himself, but he wasn't. And on the radio show, he had a great cast. There was Rochester, played by Eddie Anderson. Rochester. That's how he'd call him. And then he had what else? He had Dennis. What was his name? Dennis James? No, not Dennis James. Dennis Day. Excuse me. It was Dennis Day, and he was a singer and a comedian. He was great in that. And then he also had his wife, Mary Livingston. She was on the. I've heard that his wife had stage fright. She was scared to death to perform. But on television she was great, but not on radio. So she had panic attacks. And it was bad. Okay, so the television show. He still had the radio show when he started the television show, and the television show started in 1950. It was called Jack Benny Program. He had the usual cast. He had Dennis Day, Phil Harris, and the announcer was Don Wilson. And he also had Mel Blanc, he did the voices of the Warner Brothers cartoons, and he was great. And also Frank Nelson, who, when Jack Benny saw him and he would ask him a question, and he said yes, which he did the same thing on Sanford and Son on TV show, which was hilarious. Anyway, so when the show started, it wasn't on every week. It was like on probably once a month, maybe a couple months, and then he appeared regularly later on, probably in the early '60s. And the sponsor was Lucky Strike, and then so the show ran from 1950 to 1965. It was on CBS, and then the last year it went to NBC, which I don't know what, because at the time television was changing and younger people were watching, and they found Jack Benny kind of old fashioned. So right now, here is a introduction of the Jack Benny program in the 50s, sponsored by Lucky Strike, and Don Wilson as which he introduced the show. He was the announcer. So here it is.
From Television City in Hollywood, the Jack Benny Program, presented by Lucky Strike.
Okay, I am back. I'm glad. I hope you enjoyed that introduction from the Jack Benny Program with Don Wilson as the announcer. I want to mention a couple things more about Jack Benny. He guest starred in a lot of television shows in his career. He guest starred with Lucille Ball on The Lucy Show and Here's Lucy, and he was also on Rowan Martin's Laugh-In. Also, he was also on the Dean Martin roast, and those were funny. I used to love those, and all the comedians. They probably were drunk or something, and they were telling jokes and all that. It was a wonderful program. Yeah, I think you can find them on DVD. You can watch that. And then just remember, you can. I just want to make a point. The Jack Benny program debuted in Chicago on WBKB Channel 4, not WBBM TV Channel 2. That's crazy mixed up television stations. I mentioned that before. And unfortunately, Jack Benny died on December 1974. And, it was kind of sad because he had inoperable pancreatic cancer. And he was supposed to star in a movie, The Sunshine Boys, with Walter Matthau. But Jack Benny, unfortunately, didn't get the role. So George Burns took over. And he was so that was sad about that. And then, he's still remembered to this day on the radio program. Those Were the Days. That's on WDCB FM, and it's hosted by Steve Darnell and Ken Alexander. And every February they have a Jack Benny month, and they play their classic radio episodes every February because Jack Benny was born February 14th, 1894, and So they've been doing that tradition for a long time, a long time. I listened for a few times on Saturdays if I have time. And when I did listen Jack Benny month in February, oh, they were wonderful. And and then the host would talk about him, about each episode and probably little tidbits about his life, which is nice. And so that was nice about that. And also, you can still see his episodes on YouTube. There's DVDs out. You could download under his radio programs. They also so in where he was born in Waukegan, they have a middle school name for him. It's called the Jack Benny Middle School. And the school's motto was Home of the 39ers. That's nice. And then there's a statue of him with his violin, and it stands in downtown Waukegan. So one day, if I go to Waukegan, I'll go search for it. I'll do a Google search first online and then find it. And if I'm in the neighborhood, I'll go see it. Maybe someone could take a picture of me with Jack Benny. That'd be awesome. I would like that. So that'd be all for today for Jack Benny. I will talk about the Magic Pan Restaurant. Be with you in a second. Okay. Now, the Magic Pan, a lot of people remember that very fondly. And I've eaten there once, and it was located in Orland Square Mall in Orland Park. They had other locations. The first one opened in 1971 on 60 East Walton Street near Water Tower Place. But it wasn't a Chicago-based restaurant. It was founded in San Francisco. It was founded by Hungarian immigrants. Their names were Laszlo and Paulette Fono. And then they opened a larger one, a place in Ghirardelli Square. Then the Quaker Oats Company bought it in 1970 from the Fonos, and then it became a restaurant chain. And then it just spread out to the United States. And as the locations I mentioned in Chicago, there was one in Orland Square in Orland Park. There was one in Oakbrook Center in Oakbrook, Old Orchard Shopping Center in Skokie, Northbrook Court in Northbrook. I'm trying to think what else they had. I think that's it. Couldn't think of anywhere else. Oh, and Fort. I don't think it was at Fort City. No. I wasn't there by there. Not that I know of. I don't think so. Anyway, so they had a very interesting menu, and they made crepes. So I have the menu right here, and I'll read it off. I have the luncheon menu, and the luncheon menu came with a salad. So the first one was spinach souffle crepe with cheese sauce, cream chicken mushroom crepe. That was the second one. Third one is San Francisco crab crepe. Fourth one is shrimp gourmet crepe. And the fifth one was beef crepe bourguignon. Oh, very nice. And they were around $2, $2.25, but this must have been the 70s. So, if you buy one now, it's probably maybe $8, $9. They also had crepe Suzettes, also filled with strawberries, sour cream, and one of the menu items was chicken divan, and it was like a casserole. And it was served with broccoli and Mornay sauce, which is like a cheese, like grated cheese. And sometimes they use Parmesan cheese, and the recipe was pre-cooked chicken breast, prepared mayonnaise, and canned soup. Some versions, they added potato chips. I never had this recipe, but it sounds delicious. That really is. Someday I might cook it. We'll see about that. Anyway, so they were around for about until the mid-'80s, and then it went out of business. And they came back around... let's see, about around in the mid-2000s, like 2005. Let Us Entertain Your Enterprises brought it back in Northbrook, but it was as a fast food crepe stand. And they brought the original recipes. I don't know if it's still there, but people have told me there's a couple places at airports, and there's one at the Mall of America in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I mean, Bloomington, Minnesota, excuse me. The airport, it was located in Denver and Washington National. I don't know if it's the same ones. Maybe they're still there. Maybe they're not. I don't know. So I missed that place. It was wonderful. I went, like I said before, I went once and it was delicious. And hopefully they'll come back. Fingers crossed. Okay, so that'll be all for today. I'm glad you enjoyed the show. The topics I discussed: Bellphone Center Stores, Jack Benny, and the Magic Pan Restaurants. And hopefully, I will do another episode tomorrow, which will be episode 40. We'll see. And hopefully, we'll have some nice things to discuss that I will discuss with you. Excuse me. So, this is episode 39, season 2 of Vanished Chicagoland Stories, the podcast. And I'm your host, Pete Castanes. And thank you for joining me. And bye-bye now for me. And here is Ray Rayner saying bye-bye now for now. Take care, everybody. Goodbye.
We have to go. Bye, bye, bye.